Shalom, this is Roy Blight. This is January the 31st, 2017, and today we're continuing in our discussion of the Aleph-Beit. We're studying the letter Gimel. Gimel is the third letter representing the Holy Spirit. We're starting to get into some of the really amazing aspects of talking about the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, because he doesn't speak for himself. He only will lift up the Messiah, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus. And in studying him, we find that there's many amazing things in scriptures about him. And as we look at this mystery of the Gimel, we find that the letter Gimel corresponds with a camel. That's the Hebrew letter for camel, Gimel. And when we look at it, we start to ask ourselves, why? How could this possibly be anything but the Holy Spirit? Well, this is what we're going to be looking at today. And as we look at it, remember that every letter in the Hebrew Aleph-Beit tells a big part of the story. And it's an amazing ongoing revelation of what's happening, and we're thrilled to have it for you here today. So let's get right into this. Today we're going to be looking at the mystery of the Gimel. And when we look at it, we want to realize that there's much more to it than we understand. But remember that Gimel is camel in Hebrew. Now, understanding the meaning of Gimel is crucial to your understanding of John the Baptizer, who he was, what he was all about, what his job was. The Messiah, whether he comes to a nation or an individual heart, must have a forerunner. This is the work of the Holy Spirit. We want to look at, we want to crystallize in our thoughts the fact that the Holy Spirit, before you ever came to be a believer, was working on you, was tugging on your heart, was trying to get a hold of you, just like he's trying to get a hold of everybody all the time, even today. The Holy Spirit will come in wherever a heart opens himself up to him. The Lord, it is his will that everyone is saved. And the Messiah, he can come to a nation or an individual heart, and he wants the heart to open up. That's the lesson that we talked about with the Dalet. Now, just as God prepared earth in 6 days for the reception of man, so God commands man to prepare himself to receive him. We've been talking the last couple days about the prophecy from Isaiah, talking about prepare ye the way of the Lord. That is our job as a believer. We need to prepare our hearts to receive the Lord. When the Lord is knocking on the door to your heart, what are you doing to receive him? Are you saying, that's a bunch of nonsense? Are you actually opening the door of your heart? It's your need to open the door for the knocking that the Ruach HaKodesh is doing. And I can remember in my own life how the Lord was trying to get my attention for years before I ever came to the Lord. Through my stupidity, through my idiotic behavior, he came to me and he showed me who he was. At first just a trickle because I didn't open up my heart very much, but then the more I opened my heart, he came in like a flood. And that's the center message of the Gimel, is that the Holy Spirit will come in wherever he is asked to come in. If you remember your salvation, you can probably remember that voice bringing you to the place where you became a believer in Yeshua the Messiah. Understand that that voice is always speaking to us, and that voice is always trying to help us understand who our God really is. The devil tries to thwart that too, but if you truly want to know who the Messiah is, all you have to do is ask. The Lord is always pulling on our heart, and the Lord wants you to open up his heart because the Holy Spirit, as represented in Gimel, is always tugging on our heartstrings. Now, collectively or individually, there's always a visitation given to us with a voice crying out, prepare ye the way of the Lord. I want to go back over this just a little bit more because there's someone even right now, you're wondering in your heart, what is this mess all about? There's a tug at your heart. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the Ruach HaKodesh. And it's the voice that animated John the Baptizer, and it's the voice of the Holy Spirit. We have a tendency, we want to exalt and we want to exonerate people, and we want to really say, wow, what a person that guy was, when in fact, the one that should be given the credit at all times is the Holy Spirit. We are often prone to just say, wow, what a person that was. I could never be like him. Listen, the Holy Spirit is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if you will receive it, this voice that we're talking about is the voice of Elijah that satisfies the prophecy of the forerunner to us. It was the Holy Spirit that was animating Elijah, just as it was the Holy Spirit that was animating John the Baptizer to do the works of God and to show the authority of God. And this is the great point. You see, the name Eliyahu, which is Elijah in Hebrew, means my God is Yahweh. If you trust and believe that Jesus is your Messiah, Yahweh is your God. You trust in him. Yahweh is the God of the Bible. Yud He Vav He is what was told Moses. I am that I am. That is the God of the Bible. And this is who we worship today, who sent his son, Yeshua. Now, why is it noteworthy to observe the clothes of John the Baptizer? That is essentially what we are talking about. Why would you think it would be a big deal? And I'm going to show you. John, who came in the spirit and power of Elijah, was the Messiah's forerunner at his first coming. Whenever God's going to do something, he sends a forerunner to warn people of what's about to take place. It's the Holy Spirit who operates as the forerunner for Messiah into the hearts and lives of people today. It's always been this way. The message is always the same. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. That's what the Lord is trying to tell planet Earth right now. That's what the Lord is trying to tell the Jewish people right now, returning to their God. Prepare the way of the Lord. Not your foolish religion, but the Lord is ready to come back. And the Lord wants to open up people's hearts to what the Lord wants them to see. And it is up to us to prepare the way for him. In Matthew 3, it says, Now John himself was clothed in camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. You wonder, why does the Bible talk about his clothes at all? It's a very important topic, and it's a very important lesson that we need to really learn. And it's all wrapped up in the letter Gimel, which means camel. Why is this significant? According to the sages, the spiritual form of Gimel is that of a man walking from the second letter, Beit, to the fourth letter, the Dalet. You see the first two letters, reading from right to left again. You have Aleph and Beit, representing the Father and the Son. Then you have Dalet, which we'll talk about in coming sessions, which means door, talking about the door to a man's heart. But who's going to be knocking on the door to man's heart? The Lord sends the forerunner, and this is what Gimel is all about. The Gimel, the Holy Spirit, is the one sent from the Father to take this lesson, to take this message of who the Messiah is to the person who is to open the door to their heart and allow God to come in. And we see this in the letters themselves. You look at the Beit, you look at the Gimel, and you look at the Dalet that we just talked about, and you see the Beit and the Gimel and the Dalet. The Hebrew word means garment. So we understand that God is trying to speak even through the garments of John the Baptizer. And what is this message? Is there anything spectacular or special about camel's hair clothes? No. What is really to be understood is found in this letter Gimel. And even if you take Gimel and Beit and put them together, you have the word Gav, which means locust. That's even there. What is the point? What is being talked about? What is being stated here? And here's the point. The great point to be made is that neither John nor Elijah are the main subject of this picture. Again, we have a tendency to lift them up, but they're not the big point that's to be made. The camel hide were simply work clothes for John the Baptizer, just as John himself and Elijah in his day were the work clothes for the Holy Spirit to operate. You are a house for the Spirit of God to work through, and as you are nothing but the work clothes for the Holy Spirit in your life. Today you and I have the same powerful Spirit of God in us and can do even greater things in God's kingdom than John. What a promise. What a statement that makes. But look what it says in the Gospels themselves. This is exactly what Yeshua was telling us. In John 15 he says, But when the Helper comes, whom I shall send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father, he will testify of me. He's speaking of the Holy Spirit. Again, You are the work clothes for this Holy Spirit, and so am I. You have the Aleph and the Beit and the Gimel representing the Godhead, the Father and the Son, and now the Holy Spirit, who does the work of going toward that door in every man's heart, to be the forerunner at first, to have them open their heart and open themselves up to the Father and the Son. In John 15:27, it says, "And you also will bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning." Yeshua is talking to the disciples, and because they have allowed the Holy Spirit to work upon them, they will bear witness, because they've been with him from the beginning. It's about fellowshipping with God through the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and understanding exactly who they are and who they say they are. Look what it says here. And assuredly, the words of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, assuredly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than John the Baptizer. But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Now you understand what Yeshua was trying to get at. Now you can understand that in everything that the Lord was saying, the bottom line is the Spirit of God was in John the Baptizer. The Spirit of God was in Elijah the prophet. The Spirit of God was doing the main pulling, the main work. Yes, he was using their life. He was using their body. Yes, they were in such a way that they were mighty men of God. But you can be just as mighty a man of God as Elijah the prophet or John the Baptizer, because you have the Holy Spirit in you. And because you have the Holy Spirit in you, it sets you apart. Actually, that is what the word holy means. It means set apart. And that's what we are when we're put into use for the Lord our God. And that is what we're talking about as far as John the Baptist or baptizer. What it's talking about is those clothes that he had on were nothing but for something for him to wear. Just as your physical body, is nothing except for the Holy Spirit to bear. And the Holy Spirit in you does the work. That is why you need to be filled with the Holy Spirit. That is why you need to understand what the Scriptures are talking about when it brings us to the place where we need to be filled with the Holy Spirit. Because if you're not filled with the Holy Spirit, you're not going to be able to do the work that the Lord wants you to do. Too many people try to do these things in the power of their flesh. That's not God's message. That's not the gospel of Yeshua. That is not what the Lord wants for you at all. He wants you to come to him, learn of him, take his yoke upon you. And his yoke is easy, his burden is light. That's because the Holy Spirit is operative in us and bringing out all the good things that he desires that only he can bring out. So trust in the Lord. And remember, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Those three are one. And keep that in mind, and you'll be blessed as we study the rest of the Aleph-Beit, because it all comes into play all the way through the studies. And they're great, and they're powerful, and they're marvelous. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless.